You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sutton, and I'm here with a dear friend of mine, co-host of a podcast series we're doing together, and fellow mindset master, Eric Yusko. Eric is an aerospace engineer turned coach. You guys hear me talking about how I'm a recovering engineer all the time. I come from that world. He was right there with me every step of the way. So we come from a lot of nerdy backgrounds together. We've seen a lot of stuff, done a lot of good work in the aviation world. But he is now a mindset coach helping people in a more effective way. He has formed the company Man of Class, which is a place where men can level up and learn how to be the men they're supposed to be, right? We also have done a joint podcast series together called The Myth of Riches. It is I believe it's season 4. Is that right, Eric, of the Man of Class podcast?
Correct.
Talking about ways of educating you on your wealth journey. So anyway, here we are on our podcast, the Real Estate Runway podcast. Eric, welcome to the show, friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to get into this episode.
Absolutely. Well, what I'd love to do is just take a few moments and kind of go through your background, just help people understand who Eric Yusko is and where you've been, how you got to this place of mindset mastery, and then trying to share it with others. Like what brought you to this point, Eric?
Yeah, so I'll start off. My journey was imagine a small, scrawny kid in the middle of farmland, and you pretty much painted the perfect picture. I was the smallest kid in the class, never really engaged in school, and so a lot of times I kind of fell prey to that mindset and was like, oh, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to go do anything. But there was a switch inside of me, and I remember learning I can't remember what grade it was, but in grade school, you learn about the greats, right? You learn about all these different people in history, the ones that really made the changes. And, I got to thinking of it. It was, in that time, it was like, they didn't just get anointed. Nobody just like blessed them. It was like, oh, okay, you're blessed now. You're going to go change the world. It had to start from somewhere. Right. And so it kind of, that was like the very seed that was planted, right, of doubt that says, well, if they can do it, maybe I can as well. And then that started this lifelong journey where I've just always been curious about change and being the best person that I can be. And that's really attracted so many people to me in trying to level themselves up. And people have always been telling me that I should be a coach well before coaching was like a thing. And it was just like Tony Robbins was the only coach. And if you weren't Tony Robbins, then basically who cares? And so, it was one of those where I just kind of had this progression of journey, was always helping people, always that sound of reason, and have always been super curious in self-help and really self-transformation, because you see all these stories where somebody goes from having a really troubled childhood to being a world influencer. Then you also have, sons and daughters of the really wealthy and the elite that turn out to be not so much. And so there, what are the common themes there? And so it really boils down to that mindset. And so that's really where I've been dedicated myself, just for my own self-transformation, to go from a scrawny kid that nobody would ever pay attention to, that was going to fly under the radar, to somebody that was going to change the world.
I love that, Eric. And that's such a pure desire as well to really want to change the world in your own way. So talk a little bit about what Man of Class is. And I'd love to kind of dive into what mindset is to you and how that ties into change management, things like that. But just tell me about Man of Class for a second, because I really want to put this up and make sure people see it. I am actually a student, or what do you say, young Padawan of
Yes.
Man of Class. And it is, guys, I have business coaches, golf coaches, everything like that. But, Man of Class has really helped me in my personal life get out of my own way and be able to achieve all things that I want to achieve, not only in business, but at home. So, just tell me what Man of Class is, Eric.
Absolutely. So let's go super macro. Super macro, what's going on in the world is there's a lot of, boom, super macro. So you
guys can't see me. I'm doing hand motions trying to make Eric laugh over here.
which is pretty much just, our everyday occurrence. So
Yep.
this is a day in the life with Chad and Eric. There you go. That should be a new series right there.
A day in the life. Perfect. Write it down.
That's right. But man of class, when I started looking at everything that's been going on in the world, and there was a beautiful movement, right? Empowered women, empowering women. And it was really sort of like a bootstrapped initiative that women started getting together and rising up and saying, I can be more than what I was told that I could be. And minorities are getting so much help. And so it's really, when I look around at the different segments, right now there's a lot of hate on, the white guy, and just a lot of guys in general, because when you think a guy, it was like, well, the overprotector, the Mr. Know-it-all, the very abrupt, the very rude. And those are all just sort of things that we portray onto guys, but there's nobody there saying you can change. You don't have to be that. You don't have to be the alcoholic dad that you may have grown up with, right? You don't have to be that abusive guy. You don't have to be whatever it is that society has painted that you need to go be. So I really started looking at that going, that's really where nobody's really helping. And so I thought, what a beautiful way, because again, I believe rising tide raises all the ships. So if there's already these other movements out there, why not complement that so that guys can start transforming in what they want in their exceptional life? And so CLASS is actually an acronym, because when I boil this down and I go, sure, but what the heck does that really mean? How do I boil this down into something tangible? CLASS is really an acronym: continuously learning, adaptable, supportive, and striving for success. So when I really take those ingredients and I say that's really the foundation or the core of the onion that I want to help my guys with, that's going to be the essential ingredients that's going to help transform them from the maybe the mindset or what they've been told that they needed to go be, do, or have as a man, to somebody that can transform and really live a life that they thought was only the life in their dreams.
That's really fantastic, Eric. And I think actually, if I remember in the intro or outro of the Man of Class podcast, there's a line, and it says something to the effect of, in today's world, the world tolerates less and less of traditional masculinity, or something like that, right? And so
yes,
you kind of have found a void that's been created, is like, and I loved it. We have there's an Invest Her network out there that, two of my partners, Aaron and Kim, are speaking on this weekend, which is exactly about that: empowering female investors, right? There are, LGBT communities, there are basically insert minority group here. We're really doing a better job of society at propping those people up and giving them a hand up, not a handout, right? Showing them how to grow and excel in this world. But we also have to kind of scale that back and remember that men also, still are leaders of household, leaders in corporate America, leaders in business, just like all those other groups are. And we have to find a way to help them grow.
Well, and it's very difficult, right? When you look, again, I like to start with the macro and kind of go micro. But when you think of the macro, back, many years ago, it was exactly, guys were the only ones in the household or in the workplace, right? And there was a lot of responsibility that society had kind of thrown onto men, and they just said, basically, deal with it. And so you had this generational thing where it was like, a grandfather would tell, his son or whatever, and dad would tell his son, dad would tell his son. As the world started shifting and women started entering into the workplace, and more minorities, and the whole diverse and inclusion initiative, right? All these different things, dads now are left looking to their sons going, I don't know. Don't do what I did, because I grew up in a very different time, and I don't want to tell my son, do exactly as I did, because if I do, what kind of world am I going to set him up for, where I need to not listen to others? All right, I need to, kind of just be, do, and have sort of that militaristic style leader, right? That we know that isn't working in today's world, right? It's around empathy. It's how do you connect with people? How do you motivate? How do you inspire somebody to go do something that they would never have thought possible for themselves? And there's few inspirational leaders as you go throughout time, but it's like, how do you start drawing that in as a guy, knowing that now you don't have to go be, do, and have all those things, that you can start to partner up with, supporting your partner, and your partner may be the one that actually brings in the household income, and you can be a stay-at-home dad, right? It doesn't have to be this fine-tuned network type thing, right? Of this classification of like, this is how I have to be, do, and have everything in my life. You can explode the whole box and literally do exactly what it is that you want to go do if you know how to make change.
Yeah. So Eric, let's take this into kind of breaking down. I mean, really at the base of it, mindset is what you help people achieve, right? And I don't know if it's a thing you can attain. It's a thing that you are always growing in. But mindset, the word is used so much that I think it's kind of become Greek to some people. To you, and when you're talking with a new client, how do you envision teaching someone what mindset is? And how they can use mindset or develop the correct mindset to attain their exceptional life that they're after.
Well, it's very easy for people when you start talking about mindset and a lot of the, quote woo stuff. Many people tune out and they go, sure, whatever. Yeah, I need to go be Mr. Motivation, Inspiration, blah, 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 blah. Right.
It's like it's the Force. It's like it's the Force in Star Wars. Like, well, what the hell is the Force? No one knows what the Force is, right? So
right, exactly. They're like, oh boy, here we go. Mr. Hippie comes along. So I usually start the conversation out with, what are the things in life that you don't have that you currently want or desire most? And most people, it'll fall into two camps. Some people will say, well, I really want to find Mrs. Right, Mr. Right. Maybe it's, I want my dream house. Maybe, it could be anything. And the other is, well, I'm happy in life. Now, that's the surface layer, right? It's just like when you talk to somebody, you say, hey, how have you been? And they go, oh, yeah, I'm good. How about you? Oh, yeah, great. Okay, now let's move on. But when you actually start looking at it and you go, okay, what's really going on, right? If you can cut all the BS out and all the political correctness and what's really going on, what are the things that is really going on with you? Where is it that you really want to be in life? If at the end of your life, you had to come face to face with your potential, and your potential being literally everything that you could imagine, that person came face to face with you, would it be the same person that is looking at you in the mirror? Or I'd open yourself up to maybe, well, they have written that book. They've started that company. They've bought that private jet. They've got a helicopter, right? They travel, 26 weeks out of the year. They have, kids that absolutely adore and want to spend time with them. They have a partner that they're living to life, equally, instead of a relationship that's kind of dragging and sucking all of your energy, right? When you start painting a lot of these different pictures, usually something triggers for people. Then at that point they go, yeah, that's exactly, okay, yeah, I want more money. Or yeah, you know what, I'd love to have, to be able to travel 4 weeks a year or 12 weeks a year, or whatever that the case may be. And I'll go, great. That's not that far outside of reach for you. And they'll go, oh, that'll never happen for me. You don't understand. I've got responsibilities, all this other stuff. I've heard it all. But the interesting thing is you're not that far away from, and Chad knows this as a golfer. If you can have the perfect swing, 99% of the perfect swing, and you can be just 1 millimeter off, and you're going to slice the ball or hook the ball. And that's what happens in most people's day, is they think that they're living that perfect life and they're getting up, but they could just be one minuscule decision or one mindset decision away from being everything that they want to have in life, from being that travel person to having those experiences and building a connection with their kids that they will cherish for the rest of their life, right? Like really like pull at your heartstrings when you have kids, and when you have, you want to be a pillar in society, these things that deep down inside that maybe you've never told anybody, those are actual reality. You just need that one different thing. And that one linchpin is mindset. And that's what I tell people, to at least get the conversation of like, what the heck is mindset?
So is it just, I guess what it sounded like there is maybe mindset is primarily learning how to squash limiting beliefs that are preventing you from that, whatever that rosy picture is you just painted, right? There's, oh, that'll never happen. Is that what mindset is? Is it the mitigation of limiting beliefs?
It's the stories that we tell ourselves in which we think we're capable of.
Aha.
What do I mean by that? I maybe, I'm just going to paint a picture. I didn't have a great relationship with my parents, so therefore I can't expect to have a great relationship with my kids. Because if I didn't have one, how the heck am I going to be able to figure that out for them? Right. Or maybe I came from a poor family, and so I'm, my kids are going to be poor. And, those are the stories. It'll never happen for me. Well, but you don't understand. I got diagnosed with this when I was younger. You don't understand. I have all these responsibilities that I can't just let go of. Right. It's all the stories and what we think is capable for us. Oh, I'd love to own a private jet, but that's only reserved for rock stars and billionaires. Right. And so really, mindset, when people say, but what is it really? It's the invisible stuff. Because when you start speaking, that's the value of a coach. That's the value of finding somebody who maybe be further along in where you're at, is when you start saying that stuff, you don't realize that. That's the last thing a fish will ever realize is the water that's swimming in. The last thing that you'll be able to realize and comprehend without mindset training are the things that are limiting you from getting what you want. And it's no fault to you, right? Nobody talks about this. This wasn't something that you got taught in school. You didn't fall asleep in seventh grade, life class, right? This was never a topic that people really talked about, much like money. We've talked about this a lot, right? There's a lot of curriculum that doesn't necessarily prepare you for life, but because a lot of times we don't really know how to articulate it well enough for people to really go, oh, okay. And so that's why when you talk to somebody and they go, oh, my mindset's rock star, that's a novice. When you talk to somebody and you go, I am constantly working on my mindset, you've been at it a while, because you realize that every layer, right? Take Chad, go down his journey as you follow him. His mindset 10 years ago, when we used to sit around and hypothesize and say that we were meant for something more, was very different than 5 years ago, when he started saying, but I really want to get into this real estate game. I really want to stop speaking about it and start taking actual action, to the person that now owns his own company, right? He's partnered up with Quattro Capital, and they're doing deals left and right. You get on their newsletter and you're like, my God, these guys are just crushing it, right? Compared to where he's going to be in 5 years. The things that are invisible to you are constantly changing. But that's also a gift, because you can start, once you realize that you can start changing the invisible things around you, now you can start changing towards the betterment. You can start changing and say, I can have that rockstar relationship with my child. I can teach them to do things that I was never taught myself. I can motivate and inspire people well beyond what they're actually capable of.
So give the audience a nugget here, Eric, because you're onto something magical here. And I have an anecdote for this, quote, secret stuff that is mindset, right? And it's thin air, right? That's really what you were getting at. But what you're tracking on here, explain to the audience what the have, do, be mentality is. Because what you were doing was kind of saying, well, the mindset I had 5 years ago to get to where I am today is different than the mindset I have today to get to where I need to go tomorrow. Communicate what that means a little bit, if you don't mind.
I'll talk about the be, do, have model, and then I'll talk about the actual legitimate, like tangible, because you and I are engineers. So we want to know, like, get to the actual linchpin here. So most of the time in life, everybody wants to have something. If you ask them, who do you want to be? They'll be like, I don't know. All right, well, if you had $1 million, what would you have? And they're like, well, if I had $1 million, I drive the brand new Mercedes, right? I'd have a $500,000 home. I'd do this. They do whatever it is, right? They start listing off all the stuff that they want to have, right? That's where everybody's mind goes to. And they go, oh, but how do I get that stuff? How do I get that stuff? And they keep running into the wall. Boom, boom, boom. I can't just figure out, like, how is it that I want this stuff, but I don't know how to get it, right? Super aggravating, because then when you don't get it, then you get even more aggravated. Then you get angry at yourself because you're not seeing results. So then you double down and think you got to be more productive. And then it's just a self-feeding attack on yourself that is leading you nowhere except more frustration. But we think that once we have it, then we can start to become somebody better. And the trick to that equation is reverse it. When you start becoming that type of person, right? If you want to have money that you can give freely to organizations and to charities, you need to become that person today. You need to start, because what you're inherently doing is, if you say, well, one day when I have a boatload of money, then I'm going to be giving and free of it. Doesn't happen that way. It's not until you become that giving free person in spirit. If you give away $5, you'll give away $100. If you give away $100, you'll give away $1,000. If you give $1,000, you'll give $1 million, and it just keeps ratcheting up. But people will say, "Oh, I would never give $1 million away," and that's why you'll never get to that level. That right there, the invisible stuff that we're talking about, that example would exactly have that. Because if you can't wrap your mind around giving $1 million because that's too much money, then you'd never imagine, right? You have a hard time imagining that $10 million, right? If you were a decamillionaire, you give away $1 million, it wouldn't be anything to you, right? It's just like giving away $1, right? Once you get to a certain amount, now all of a sudden it completely changes your frame of reference. So you have to be that person in what you want to be. Then you'll find out that you start doing all the things that are consistent with that. And then you'll actually start to have all of the things in life that you really want to have. Now, why is that really true? Let's get down to the core onion of why is that actual truth. We know as human beings that we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts that occur every single day. And when people say, "Oh my God, that's a lot," I don't know if I have that many. You do, because it's, well, that's green, that's blue, boy, girl, hot coffee. Maybe I do want Starbucks. Maybe I don't want Starbucks. Should I spend the money on Starbucks, right? You just have these thoughts after thoughts after thoughts after thoughts. Your brain is absorbing all this. You have 5 senses. Imagine 5 funnels of information flooding to you constantly. You can't process everything, because if you were to try to process literally everything, you just sit in the chair and stare at a wall the entire day, because you're trying to filter through all of this data, right? So what your brain does is it processes it, right? It basically is the best executive assistant you'll ever have, because it will prioritize the things that you're thinking about. It's called the reticular activating system. Tony Robbins talks about it. Many other people talk about it. The reticular activating system, it funnels away. So if you say, look for red, you'll automatically find red when whatever it is that you're looking at. If what's hot, something that's hot, you'd start finding out, oh, where's the oven, right? I'm going to look for oven. I'm going to look for hot coffee cups, right? That's what your brain's going to go after. And so when you start telling yourself, I can't give away that much money, you're going to look for all the reasons why you're poor. Well, I guess I can't. If I can't even make ends meet, how am I going to give away $1 million, right? If I only bring in $500 a week, like how am I gonna give away $1 million? Like there's no way, right? That's the story that's being run repeat. So when you think about that, now all of a sudden all your 5 senses worth of data is going to collapse down into I'm poor. Show me and tell me all the reasons why I'm poor. And it will do exactly that over and over and over again, to the point where then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm super poor, right? I don't want to be here, right? The point of I want to be poor. I want to be rich. Like, how do I get rich? And it's because of that's who you have to become. You have to be a different person. So going back to the Chad example, Chad and who he is today in 2021. Now, many of you didn't know him in 2010, right? 2011. I had the luxury of knowing him, but 10 years ago, he was different, right? He was a fun-loving guy. Don't make no mistake. He was still a great and wonderful guy. Like he's the same as what he is now. He thinks differently today. He thinks, where is the investment? Who, not how. Where can I go faster? Where are my limiting spots? I need a coach in all areas of my life, because if I want to be exceptional in all areas of my life, I need a coach in all areas of my life. You were to say that to 2011 Chad, and Chad would have gone, yeah, I'll read a book. I'll be all right.
Yep.
I'll do it myself. Don't worry.
I'll do it myself. I'm a mentality.
Right.
And I would have looked at it as an expense as well. I would have said, I can't afford that.
Bingo.
That
right there, that just solidifies that whole point, right? So the universe, God, however it is, whatever your religion is, I'm not meaning on poking in on any of that, but this stuff is irregardless, right? It's the science around the human brain, and we know how that starts to feed in, and that starts leading into the decisions that you make, the behaviors you start to develop, and the habits you start instilling into your life that will either make or break you.
Wow. That is fantastic, Eric. And we have a joke on the other podcast series that I'm the one who always drops the mic at the end of the episode. Eric did it right there. We're going to conclude that on mindset. That is fantastic. Eric, I'd love to get over to our lightning round of questions, just get the audience to know you a little bit. So loosen up, limber up, buckle up. Here we go.
Let's do this.
All right. So I know you're awesome. I've seen all the great things that you've done, but tell me what your biggest failure to date is and what did it teach you? I want some dirt, man. Give me something dirty.
Yeah, dirt. Being in relationships well past, you can attain to this. Being in relationships well past their expiration date kept me stuck for the longest period of time.
That makes sense. Yeah. And it sounds that's an emotional mistake, right? It had nothing to do with business, but it inhibited a lot of areas of your life. I remember that time.
And that keeps me from becoming somebody new because I was stuck into relationships and surrounding myself with people that I just couldn't let go of.
Yeah. And so tell me why you're awesome, man. Tell me what your superpower is in your business.
My superpower in my business is that I can cut through all the BS. I hear a lot of things. I hear a lot of excuses. At the end of the day, I engineer at heart. So I get to root cause extremely quickly and figure out what are the lies that you're telling yourself so we can rewrite that to start making progress towards where you want to go.
I just started having a nightmare of root cause analysis from our previous life. So we're going to leave that one right there. So we talked about you being the host of the podcast, but where can people, find the Man of Class podcast?
Man of Class podcast is on any podcast platform, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify. It's all out there. And if you want to just go to manofclass.com, there's a link there as well. So you can go click that and it'll take you right on over to where it's at.
I love it. And I do encourage you all to go subscribe to that. I listen to it pretty much weekly, but if you enjoy the way Eric talked about mindset and talked about, in kind of intangible form that one can understand, not this mystical force or something like that that's out there. He spends a lot of time going through very practical applications of this stuff that you can take away, value added content and use it to better your life right then and there. So I encourage you to go subscribe to that. There will be a link in the show notes, by the way. So if you missed that, manofclass.com, or scroll down to your show notes in whatever platform you are in. And Eric, last question. That one of Quattro's 4 pillars is philanthropy. So do you have any philanthropic cause that you would like for our listeners to promote?
Right now, I'm actually partnering up with the Salvation Army. So discussion on actually becoming one of the board members so I can start making a bigger influence within that charity. So Salvation Army, you know who they are. You hear their bells ringing every Christmas time. They do more than just the Christmas time ring-a-ding. So go there, figure out how you can help. A lot of times they help people who, the beautiful story is they're actually helping a lot of people who used to be givers. COVID hit and wrecked a lot of families. There've actually people who have been donating have actually been receiving that same feed, receiving the gifts, the charity, the help, the leg up, the interview, whatever that it might be.
Wow. Comes full circle sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. It
absolutely Eric, does. How can the listeners get in touch with you?
On all social media, at Eric Yusko on, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and manofclass.com. We got the podcast and in there, just if you want to even chat and talk through stuff, most of the time people actually see a ton of value in just a conversation, a coffee conversation, because, some coaches, they want to hold back all the great stuff. And I try to help get people the right solutions to the right problems immediately. So grab a cup of virtual coffee and let's get together.
Fantastic. And guys, this will be down in the show notes as well. So Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show, dropping several nuggets. I know the listeners are really going to get a great amount out of this mindset conversation and how they can start to understand what mindset is. But, like you mentioned, it is not something you have. It is something you're always building, right? So keep that in mind. That's why God made coaches like Eric to assist in that construction process. So exactly. Eric, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right, everyone. This has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. Over and out for now.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway podcast.